You're fired! Get out!
Fine.
No, wait, please, come back. I'm calling him. No.
Security was already at Daniel Reyes's desk before he even knew he'd been fired. His daughter's heart medicine was still in the break room fridge beside the yogurt he'd promised to bring home. And above the lobby, on a 40-foot screen, the CEO was smiling beneath the words, "We take care of our own." If stories like this hit you somewhere deep, subscribe, like the video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because what happened next didn't just ruin one man's life. It exposed an entire company. And it ended in a way nobody in that building was ready for. Daniel stood there with a barcode scanner still in one hand, grease on his sleeve, exhaustion under his eyes. He had just finished an 18-hour shift. He hadn't slept. His 7-year-old daughter, Mia, had spent half the night in the ER because her heart condition had been acting up again, and he'd come straight from the hospital to work because missing a shift wasn't an option. Then, 2 men from corporate security blocked his chair. "Mr. Reyes," one of them said, not even looking embarrassed. "We need your badge." Daniel blinked. "For what?" No answer, just footsteps behind him. Slow, sharp, expensive. When he turned, Catherine Vale was walking through the operations floor with her assistant, the head of HR, and Brent Lawson, the company's chief operating officer. Catherine didn't usually come downstairs. The warehouse offices were too loud, too warm, too real for executives like her. But that morning, in a cream suit and cold lipstick, she came anyway. She stopped 3 feet from Daniel. "Your access is being terminated, effective immediately," she said. The room went silent. Forklifts still beeped in the distance. Conveyor belts still rattled. But near Daniel, all the air seemed to disappear. He laughed once, confused. "Terminated? Catherine, there has to be a mistake." "There isn't." Her voice was flat, efficient, like she was canceling a meeting. Brent stepped forward and slid a folder across Daniel's desk. "You violated company compliance procedures, tampered with restricted shipment logs, and attempted unauthorized contact with one of our hospital partners." Daniel stared at him, then at the folder, then back at Catherine. "No," he said quietly. "I reported a defective batch." Brent gave a thin smile. "And there it is." Daniel's chest tightened. 3 days earlier, he had flagged something dangerous in a shipment of pediatric infusion pumps, devices that regulated medication delivery for children with severe cardiac conditions. A serial cluster from batch 7C had failed thermal testing twice. Daniel had seen the report himself. He'd sent it up the chain. Then the report disappeared. Now they were acting like he was the criminal. He looked at Catherine again. Really looked. She wasn't confused. She wasn't shocked. She had already decided. "You didn't even call me upstairs," he said. "You sent security." "You're being escorted out," Catherine replied. "Don't make this harder than it already is." For a second, Daniel just stood there, like the words hadn't fully reached him yet. Then he swallowed and asked the only thing that mattered. "My benefits?" HR answered before Catherine could. "Coverage ends at midnight." That one landed harder than the firing. Coverage ends at midnight. Mia's surgery consultations, her medication, her specialist, her tests. Everything in his body went still. He didn't yell, didn't flip the desk, didn't beg. He just said, "You're doing this knowing I have a sick child." A few people looked down. One woman near receiving actually covered her mouth. Catherine's jaw tightened, but if she felt anything, it never reached her eyes. "This is a business decision." Daniel let out a breath that sounded almost like pain. "No," he said. It's a character decision. And that would have been enough humiliation for one lifetime. But Brent wasn't done. As Daniel took the framed photo of Mia from his desk, Brent said it louder, making sure people heard. Let this be a lesson. No one is bigger than this company. That did it. Not for Daniel, for the room. Because everyone on that floor knew exactly who kept that company from falling apart every night. Daniel was the one who stayed when a winter storm shut down half the city and an NICU in Baltimore needed emergency units by sunrise. Daniel was the one who slept in his car between shifts during a ransomware scare. Daniel was the one who knew which driver to call, which hospital to prioritize, which machine made that weird clicking sound before it failed. But now, with one folder and 2 security guards, they were acting like he was disposable. He took Mia's picture, a half-charged phone cable, a sweater she'd left in his office after a bring-your-child-to-work day 6 months earlier. And then, from the break room fridge, he took the medicine. Nobody stopped him. Nobody said goodbye. As he crossed the lobby, the giant screen above him played a glossy company video. Catherine's voice filled the space. At Valley Nova Health, family isn't a slogan. It's our promise. Daniel almost laughed. Outside, the morning air felt brutally cold. Mia was asleep in the back seat of his aging Honda, curled under a pink blanket with cartoon stars on it. Her small face looked pale, fragile, too peaceful for the kind of day that was beginning to tear their life apart. When he opened the driver's door, she stirred. Daddy? Hey, Bug. Did you fix the hospital machines? He gripped the steering wheel before answering. Not yet. She rubbed one eye. Can we still get pancakes? And that was the first moment he nearly broke. Because children don't ask the big question right away. They ask the tiny one. The normal one. The one that makes tragedy feel even crueler. He turned and smiled the best lie he had. Yeah, he said. We can still get pancakes. At the diner, Mia used too much syrup and laughed when it dripped onto her sleeve. Daniel watched her like a man memorizing light before a storm. He checked his phone under the table. No apology. No correction. No call from anyone with a conscience. Just an email from payroll. Final separation documents. He didn't open it. Daddy? Mia said softly. Are we poor again? He looked up. That word again hit him like a blade. After Mia's mother died 3 years earlier, there had been a stretch when the heat was shut off twice in one winter. Daniel had worked warehouse nights, construction mornings, delivery apps in between. Mia had once worn 2 pairs of socks to bed and told him it felt like camping so he wouldn't feel bad. He had clawed them out of that life one brutal hour at a time, and now here they were, staring at the edge of it again. He reached across the table and took her tiny, sticky hand. No, he said. We're not poor again.
By 12:07, he understood how fast the life can collapse. The pharmacist was kind. That made it worse. I'm sorry, Mr. Reyes, she said. The insurance termination already processed. Already? It's showing inactive. He glanced at Mia, who was sitting in one of the plastic chairs, swinging her legs and trying to peel the corner off a smiley face sticker. How much out of pocket? The pharmacist hesitated. Then she wrote the number down and slid it toward him. Daniel stared at it. It was more than his rent. He laughed once under his breath, not because it was funny, but because sometimes the body does strange things when it's cornered. There has to be a partial fill. I can do 3 days. 3 days. 3 days of medication for a child whose heart didn't forgive interruptions. He nodded, paid with a card that would probably bounce by morning, and took the paper bag like it contained the last remaining air in the world. Back in the car, Mia fell asleep again. Daniel sat behind the wheel and finally opened the folder Brent had given him. It was a lie dressed as paperwork. Unauthorized data access, improper external communication, breach of safety protocol. He read every line, twice. Then his phone buzzed. Malik. Daniel answered immediately. "Tell me you saw what happened." "I saw enough," Malik said, voice low. Malik worked in internal systems, one floor above operations. "Listen to me carefully. Don't reply to any company emails. Don't sign anything." Daniel went still. "Why?" "Because the access logs in your file were altered." The parking lot around Daniel seemed to tilt. "You're sure?" "I checked backup timestamps before they locked me out. Someone edited your credentials into the 7C report trail after the fact." Daniel closed his eyes. He had known it. But hearing it out loud lit something dangerous inside him. "Who?" A pause. Then Malik said, "Brent." Not maybe, not probably. Brent. The COO who smiled with all teeth and no warmth. The man Catherine trusted because he made ugly things look profitable. Daniel looked through the windshield, jaw flexing. "Send me what you have." "I can't from my work account. They're watching everything." Malik. "I'm trying, man. Just don't disappear. They need this pinned on someone before tomorrow's investor announcement." Tomorrow. The launch. Daniel's stomach dropped. Batch 7C. "They're shipping it," he whispered. "They already did." For a moment, he couldn't breathe. This wasn't about his job anymore. Those pumps were headed to pediatric hospitals across 3 states. He hung up and immediately pulled up the contact list for regional clinics. Most of those numbers he knew by memory. He'd spent years coordinating emergency logistics. He knew which hospitals answered fastest, which loading docks jammed in the rain, which nurse managers skipped lunch. He started dialing. First hospital, voicemail. Second, transferred. Third, risk management, no answer. When he finally reached someone at St. Agnes Children's Receiving, the woman on the line cut him off halfway through. "Sir, if you're no longer with Vale Nova, I can't take instructions from you." "It's not an instruction," Daniel said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "It's a warning. Pull any pediatric infusion pumps marked 7C Lot 114 through 122. Don't use them." "Where is this information coming from?" "From a man you'll wish you listened to in an hour." She hung up. Daniel stared at the phone in disbelief. He wanted to punch the dashboard. Instead, he drove. Not home. Back toward the city. Toward the one place he swore he would not return to. Because if nobody in power would listen politely, then maybe he needed to force the truth into the room. At Vale Nova headquarters, the lobby was full of flowers, camera crews, catered pastries, and smiling interns wearing lanyards for the investor launch. A string quartet was setting up near the staircase. On the giant screen, Catherine's face rotated beside words like innovation and trust. Daniel walked in wearing a wrinkled work shirt and the look of a man who had run out of fear. The receptionist stood up. "Sir, you can't—" I know exactly what I can't do, he said, already moving. Security saw him too late. He reached the base of the main stairs just as Catherine stepped onto the stage above the lobby, applause echoing around her. She began with numbers, growth projections, partnerships, market confidence. Then Daniel shouted, "You shipped a defective pediatric batch!" Silence crashed through the room. Every head turned. Catherine froze mid-sentence. Brent's face changed first. Not shock. Rage. Security grabbed Daniel's arms, but he twisted free long enough to yell again. "Batch 7C failed thermal testing twice. Ask your COO why the reports were buried." The cameras loved it. Phones came out everywhere. Brent rushed down the stairs, voice sharp. "Get him out." Daniel looked right at Catherine. "You're launching this while kids are going to end up in ICU." That did it. Security dragged him backward across the marble floor, while investors whispered and reporters leaned forward like wolves smelling blood. And Catherine? Catherine didn't defend him, didn't stop them. She turned back toward the microphones with a face like steel and said, "I apologize for the disruption. This is a former employee making false claims." Former employee. False claims. Daniel stopped fighting then. Not because he gave up, because he saw it clearly. She was going to let this happen. The doors slammed behind him. Outside, 2 guards warned him not to come back. He laughed in their faces. Then he got in his car and finally let himself shake. Not from fear, from helplessness. From the sick realization that he had done everything the right way, and the right way had just been thrown out of a glass building and told to stay quiet. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Something made him answer. "Daniel Reyes?" "Yes." "This is Dr. Helen Chen from Mercy Children's." He sat up so fast his seatbelt locked. "Doctor, one of our biomedical nurses said you called earlier about a shipment warning?" "Yes." Her voice was calm in the way doctors get calm when the situation is no longer small. "We just had a pump from your flagged batch fail during setup in pediatric cardiac recovery." Daniel felt his blood turn cold. Was anyone hurt? Not yet, because it happened before patient connection. Not yet. The 2 most terrifying words in the English language. "How many units do you have?" 12. He shut his eyes. "Pull every one of them, and call every hospital in your network. Don't wait for Valley Nova." "We already started." "Good." Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "One more thing. Valley Memorial wasn't so lucky. A child coded 20 minutes ago. Same device family." Daniel's hand tightened around the phone so hard it hurt. A child coded. Somewhere, another parent was standing in a white hallway with that empty feeling beneath their ribs, the one where time turns liquid and prayer sounds like breathing. He whispered, "Dear God." And at that exact moment, 40 floors above him, Catherine Vale's assistant was walking fast toward the executive stage with a phone in her hand and fear on her face. Catherine saw her and instantly knew something was wrong. She took the phone, annoyed at first. Then she heard the voice on the other end. It was the chair of the board. No greeting, no cushioning. "Catherine, listen carefully. There's a hospital incident tied to the pediatric rollout. And before you say a word, understand this. My grandson is at Valley Memorial." Everything in her body went rigid. The board chair never sounded scared. Angry, yes. Ruthless, often. But scared? Never. "There's more," he said. "Regulators have been contacted, and one of the physicians says an operations manager named Daniel Reyes warned people this morning before being removed from the building. What the hell did you do?" For the first time that day, Catherine had no answer. Not the polished one, not the executive one. Nothing. She looked out over the lobby, where reporters were already whispering into phones, where Brent was barking at legal, where the giant screen behind her still said, "We take care of our own." Suddenly the slogan felt obscene. "Find Daniel," she said. Brent stepped closer. "Catherine, do not panic. We contain the narrative, suspend distribution, and—" She turned to him with a look so cold it actually made him step back. "Find him." 10 minutes later, Daniel was parked outside Mia's school, forehead against the steering wheel, trying to decide whether to tell police, reporters, or every hospital he knew first. Then his phone rang again. Catherine Vale. He just stared at the name. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, he answered. "What?" There was no boardroom confidence in her voice now. No polished edges, just urgency. "Daniel, I need you to come back." He almost laughed. "I'm sorry, what?" "You were right about 7C. A long silence filled the car. Not because he was surprised, because he wanted her to hear how alone those words were now. Finally he said, "You fired me in front of 200 people." "I know. My daughter lost health coverage before I could get her prescription filled." A breath on the other end. Then quietly, "I know." "No," Daniel said, and this time anger came through sharp enough to cut. "You know now. You didn't know when it mattered." He could hear movement around her, shouting, phones, panic. "Daniel, please. Hospitals need the shipment map. You built the routing system. Brent claims we can trace it internally, but they can't do it fast enough. Children are using those units right now." There it was. The truth stripped clean. She didn't need optics. She needed him. He looked through the windshield at the elementary school doors, children beginning to gather inside the glass. "Why would I help you?" "Because you're not them," she said, and her voice cracked in a way that startled both of them. "Because children will die if you don't." Daniel closed his eyes. That was the unbearable part. If this had only been about revenge, it would have been easy. But innocent people were caught inside the blast radius of corporate cruelty, and he knew it. He asked one question. "Is Brent still there?" A pause. "Yes." "Then listen carefully. I'm not coming back for you. I'm coming back for the kids. And if I walk in that building, he walks out in handcuffs, or I walk right back out." Catherine didn't hesitate. "Done." When Daniel arrived, the red carpet from the investor event was still laid across the lobby floor, trampled and crooked now. Reporters were being pushed behind velvet ropes. Employees stood in clusters, whispering like survivors after an earthquake. Every face followed him. A few hours earlier, he'd been dragged out like a criminal. Now the CEO herself was waiting at the entrance. Catherine stepped toward him, stripped of performance at last. No cameras near enough to flatter her, no script left to hide behind. For one stunned second, she looked not powerful, but terrified. "Thank you for coming." Daniel walked past her. "I said I came for the kids." Upstairs, the war room was chaos. Distribution maps on screens, legal counsel sweating through collars. Compliance officers suddenly rediscovering their spines. Brent still there, red-faced, trying to direct people like nothing had changed. Daniel took one look at him and said, "Pull the backup logs from Node 3. Brent scoffed. "We don't have time for theatrics." Daniel didn't even turn his head. "Malik?" From the back of the room, Malik stepped forward, holding a drive in his hand. "I already did." Brent's expression broke for the first time. Malik plugged the drive into the display terminal. There it was. Timestamp history, edited credentials, deleted safety report, forwarded messages, and one email from Brent to HR at 2:13 a.m. If Reyes escalates outside chain again, remove him before launch. Catherine doesn't need noise right now. Nobody in the room spoke. Catherine read it once, then again. When she looked up, whatever was left of the old Brent-friendly world was gone. Security entered. Brent started talking fast. "Catherine, this is absurd. This doesn't prove intent. He accessed—" "Stop," she said. He did. Not because he wanted to, because her voice had changed. It no longer sounded like someone protecting a company. It sounded like someone discovering the exact cost of her own blindness. "Escort him out," she said. Brent stared at her. "You're making a mistake." Catherine's eyes flashed. "My mistake was trusting you over the man who tried to protect children." As security took Brent by the arm, he looked at Daniel with pure venom. "You think this makes you a hero?" Daniel met his stare. "No, it makes you caught." Then everything became motion. Daniel sat at the main terminal and started calling out distribution codes from memory so fast people had to scramble to keep up. "Pull shipments to Mercy, Valley, St. Agnes, Northlake, all pediatric cardiac units. Freeze reroutes on Corridor East. Get me live confirmations, not emails. If a hospital doesn't answer, call the charge nurse desk directly." Screens changed. Phones lit up. Teams moved. Catherine stood beside him at first, useless and silent, until Daniel snapped, "Don't just stand there. Call the board and authorize full public recall." Legal objected immediately. She overrode them. Then he said, "Call the FDA before they hear it from the press." She did. One by one, confirmations came in. Mercy pulled 12 units. Northlake pulled 8. St. Agnes found 2 already prepped but not connected. Valley Memorial had 4 in circulation. Every number felt like a countdown. Then Daniel's phone vibrated. Mrs. Alvarez, his elderly neighbor. He answered instantly. "Mia?" "Daniel," she said, breathless. "The school called. She felt dizzy during recess. I'm taking her to St. Luke's now." The room disappeared. For a second, Daniel heard nothing. Not the phones, not the typing, not Catherine calling his name. Just those words. Taking her to St. Luke's now. He was on his feet before he realized he'd stood. "I have to go." Catherine saw his face and understood immediately. "What happened?" "My daughter." He grabbed his keys, then stopped. Because on the screen behind him, Valley Memorial was still unconfirmed. 4 units. Somewhere, 4 children might still be attached. And if he left now, the handoff would slow. Seconds would matter. This was the kind of choice no parent should ever have to make. And yet life makes them anyway when enough selfish people have already made theirs. His hand shook. He turned back to the terminal, typed 3 commands, rerouted the emergency trace, then looked at Malik.
If I'm gone, follow the branch report through thermal serial overlays. Don't wait for approval. Malik nodded hard. Go. Daniel started toward the elevator. Then Catherine said, I'm driving. He almost told her to stay out of his life. But the company car waiting downstairs had police clearance attached to it now, and St. Luke's was 20 minutes away in traffic. So he got in. The ride was silent for the first 5 blocks. Then Catherine said, barely above a whisper, How old is she? 7. What's her name? Daniel kept his eyes on the road ahead. Mia. Catherine nodded once. After another block, she said, I should have listened to you. He laughed bitterly. That sentence is always cheap after damage. She didn't defend herself. Good, because there wasn't one. At the hospital, Daniel was out of the car before it fully stopped. Mia was in observation, pale against white sheets, little wires pressed to her chest. Mrs. Alvarez sat beside her, holding one tiny sneaker in her lap like she'd taken it off and never put it back on. Daniel reached the bed in 3 steps. Hey, Bug. Mia opened her eyes. Daddy. He touched her hair, her cheek, her fingers. All there. Still warm. Dr. Patel came in with a chart.
She had an arrhythmia episode, but we stabilized it quickly. The bigger issue is the medication interruption. Has she missed a dose? Daniel said nothing. He didn't have to. The doctor looked from his face to the paper bag on the chair to the tremor in his hand, and the answer filled the room by itself. Catherine was standing in the doorway. She heard every word. Medication interruption. Not because the father didn't care. Because the company she ran had decided a sick child could absorb the cost of an executive lie. Daniel sat beside Mia and kissed her forehead. I'm sorry, he whispered. And Mia, half drugged and exhausted, said the worst possible thing. It's okay, Daddy. I know you're trying. That broke him. Not loudly, not theatrically. Just a quiet shattering behind the eyes of a man who had held up too much for too long. He bent his head and cried with his daughter's hand in his. And for once, nobody in the room looked away. Catherine stepped back into the hallway like she didn't deserve to share the air. A few minutes later, Daniel came out. His face had been washed, but grief leaves marks water can't touch. Catherine stood there waiting. I authorized full reinstatement of your health coverage retroactive to midnight, she said, and I signed a personal guarantee for all medical costs caused by the interruption. Daniel stared at her. Then he said, That helps my daughter. What about everyone else you can erase with a folder? She swallowed. He kept going. If I come back, it's not as your grateful employee. It's as the man who gets to say no when safety is buried. Every report, every batch. No executive override without written review. And the hourly staff keeping this place alive get real emergency protection, not slogans. Catherine nodded slowly. Yes. And Brent doesn't disappear with a severance package. He won't. Public apology, Daniel said. Not to me first. To the families. She looked down the hallway toward Mia's room, then back at him. Yes. The next morning, the apology was live. Not polished. Not triumphant. Catherine stood before cameras without the giant screen, without the music, without the language that had protected her before. She admitted the recall. She admitted Daniel Reyes had raised the alarm. She admitted leadership failure.
Brent Lawson was under investigation before noon. By evening, 2 more executives had resigned. Reporters who once used phrases like visionary CEO were now using words like negligence and cover-up. And Daniel? He spent that day not celebrating, not posturing, not giving revenge speeches.
He spent it in a hospital chair, feeding Mia orange ice pops and answering calls from pediatric units, making sure every remaining device was accounted for. 3 days later, Mercy Children's confirmed something that made the whole city go quiet. Because the recall had been accelerated when Daniel returned, 2 additional hospitals had pulled compromised units less than 20 minutes before patient connection. 20 minutes. That was the distance between catastrophe and survival. The board offered Daniel a title, a bonus, a corner office. He refused the office, kept the title they hated most, Director of Patient Safety Response, a job with authority sharp enough to interrupt power when power got arrogant. On his first day back, he crossed the same lobby where he had been marched out. Same marble floor, same reception desk, same giant screen overhead. Only this time, the slogan was gone. In its place was a plain blue line of text. If a warning is inconvenient, listen harder. Employees pretended not to stare, but many did. A few clapped softly. The woman from receiving, the one who had covered her mouth when he was fired, walked up and handed him a sticky note. It said only this: "My son uses one of those pumps. Thank you." Daniel folded the note and put it in his pocket beside Mia's latest drawing. When he reached the elevator, Catherine was there waiting. Not blocking his path, not leading the way, just standing to the side. "Mia doing better?" she asked. He nodded. "She is." A small breath of relief escaped her. Then she said, "I don't expect forgiveness." Daniel looked at the elevator doors, then at her. "Good," he said, "because that's not what this is." The doors opened. He stepped inside. She didn't move. Just before the doors closed, he added, "But if you mean what you said, prove it every day." Then the elevator shut, and for the first time in a long time, the man going up was not the one being judged by the building. It was the building being judged by him. And maybe that's why this story stays with people. Because sometimes the strongest comeback isn't screaming or revenge or watching someone powerful fall to their knees. Sometimes it's a tired single dad with hospital receipts in his pocket, choosing to save other people's children right after the world tried to take care away from his own. Some people get their job back. Daniel got his name back. And if you were in his place, would you have gone back at all?